One thing we've learned from Donald Trump over the years is that what you see is what you get. The man does not play games, whether it's 4D chess or anything else for that matter. He does what he wants to do, and he does it because he wants it done. He nominated Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General because Donald Trump wants Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. It was late yesterday afternoon when President Trump announced on press release via True Social that his nominee for Attorney General of the United States to head the Department of Justice would be none other than Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. And well, the news was not roundly accepted in many circles in Washington, D.C. Let's take a look at how they're taking it over on our favorite cable news network, MSNBC.
Well, Julie, let's talk about some of the picks that you just ran through. Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. Do you think that they are confirmable at this point? What's the buzz on the Hill right now?
Well, I mean, I hope you don't forgive me for saying this, Kristen, but the general vibe on the Hill right now is WTF. People are shocked at the news of Gaetz, especially. I feel like I couldn't even get around to getting reaction on Tulsi Gabbard when this pick of Gaetz came down the pike. Senators, Republican lawmakers, even one of them in a closed-door meeting said, oh, my God, when they saw the post from Donald Trump. Several senators, I just ran into Lindsey Graham, for example, who kind of brushed me off and said he didn't speak to Trump yet. We'll see, he said, if Gaetz is confirmable, if he's a good pick. Chuck Grassley, who's going to be the top Republican on the Judiciary Committee, working very closely with the next Attorney General. He really didn't have anything to say. He stood there for 30 seconds, just completely baffled when reporters told him about this. Others like Collins, Murkowski, those who are seen to deflect from whatever Trump tries to do, their press handlers basically pushing us aside. And it is because look at who Gaetz is. He's currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for some of these personal misgivings that he's been a part of, some of the things that the federal government has investigated him on and later dropped charges on. He is still very much being investigated by that House committee. Bipartisan sentiment across the aisle is they really can't believe that Gaetz is the one who ended up with this top job. And the question of if he's confirmable, well, you talk about all these picks. This really is the biggest test between Senate Republicans and Trump, and a test of their allyship to him, too.
It sure is, Julie. It's well put.
Yeah, well put, Julie. Julie, who began by saying that the reaction on Capitol Hill is WTF. By the way, for those of you who playing at home and can't spell, WTF stands for what the. Let me explain to you about what's really going on here. We've got a lot of reaction to go through, and at the end, I will explain exactly to all of you and to our friends over on MSC. I will explain the actual. But you've got to wait until the end to get that. But before I do, I just want you to remember one thing that you just heard in that report, that Matt Gaetz had just finished a investigation at the hands of the House Ethics Committee that began after the Justice Department investigated him and then dropped the charges. Remember that. Put a pin in it, as the kids say. Matt Gaetz, Congressman of Florida, was investigated by the Justice Department. Then that investigation was dropped. House Ethics Committee picked up the investigation. Remember that as we go through all these reactions, and then I will explain the aforementioned actual. Meanwhile, if you're at MSNBC and you're trying to make sense of it all, who do you turn to? Well, of course, you turn to one of your top reporters in Washington, D.C., who spent several years of the first Trump administration pushing the lie and scam that was the Russian collusion hoax, because he knows everything, this guy does. Why isn't he fired? Oh, no. He's an employee in good standing. He's Ken Delanian at NBC News.
Hearing from people inside the DOJ right now about what this Gaetz pick would mean for the future of the department.
They are absolutely horrified, Anna, and that's not an exaggeration. And they're not speaking by name, but I'll just tell you that John Bolton, who's one of the most conservative figures in Washington, who served as Donald Trump's national security advisor, just said in the last hour that this is the worst nomination for a cabinet post in American history. And that's not hyperbole. He legitimately believes that. People are horrified because, as you said, the Attorney General is not only the most important legal job in the United States, it's a very important national security job. I think this is getting a little bit lost, particularly post 9/11. The Attorney General sees the most sensitive intelligence in the government, much of the same intelligence that the president sees. He or she oversees very sensitive, secret counterintelligence investigations, counterterrorism operations, signs off on things that the intelligence agencies are doing, negotiates with the tech companies about how the NSA is accessing data. It's just mind-boggling, and it takes up much of the Attorney General's portfolio, that national security part of it that we don't usually see because much of it is secret. And it's an incredible responsibility, and Matt Gaetz just doesn't have anything in his resume that would suggest he's prepared for that. And then you have this other side where he's threatening to blow up the department and has accused it of being corrupt. And he actually has said he believes that Merrick Garland has ordered the FBI to investigate Joe Biden's political opponents. If you believe that, then you might believe that you can do the same thing as Attorney General. That's not what happened, but Matt Gaetz appears to believe it. And there's a real fear inside the Justice Department that he or people like him would order investigations where there was no predicate, where there was no crime, and that's going to force some career people to make some really hard choices on.
Yes, people are horrified. I mean, can you imagine actually thinking that Merrick Garland used the Justice Department to investigate Joe Biden's political opponents? I mean, next thing you'll do is tell me that Merrick Garland used the Justice Department to investigate Catholics for going to Latin Mass, or parents for going to school board meetings who were angry about their curriculum or perhaps social distancing policies, and they were investigated as domestic terrorists. I mean, next thing you'll tell me is that Merrick Garland coordinated with local DAs in Manhattan and Atlanta to trump up charges against Donald Trump to keep him from running for president. I mean, who would believe anything like that? And of course, don't forget the national security component that the Justice Department is in charge of. The Attorney General has to sign off on very sensitive things like spying warrants and FISA warrants on members of the Trump campaign because they were involved in Russian collusion. And you've got to have major credentials to be able to sign off on such important things like that. People are losing their minds about this in Washington, D.C., because in the intelligence community, they won't be able to just do whatever the hell they want under the guise of national security, because they won't have an attorney general who signs off and rubber stamps everything that they demand. Wow, Ken, that's some great reporting there. I feel convinced. Don't you? John Cornyn, senator from Texas, who just came off a humiliating defeat from Majority Leader. He now has no role at all in the leadership of the Republican Party in the Senate. He was asked about Congressman Gaetz, and, well, he wants to know exactly what Congressman Gaetz is guilty of. It's basically what he said.
Be talking about recess.
On the issue of vetting, though, how critical is it then to have access to what the House Ethics Committee has found in their investigation?
I think there should not be any limitation on the Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation, including whatever the House Ethics Committee has generated.
So he wants to see the fruits of the House Ethics Committee investigation into Matt Gaetz, an investigation that will now be dropped because Matt Gaetz has resigned from Congress. And so there's no reason for the Ethics Committee to conduct or reveal an investigation into a person who is no longer a member of the House. But why can't we see the results of that investigation? After all, the House Ethics Committee is part of law enforcement and follows regular due process rules to investigate somebody, right? Oh, no, actually, they're not. That's not at all what they do. That's not part of due process, and it's not part of the Justice Department. I remind you, of course, that the House Ethics Committee investigation into Congressman Gaetz was only began because the Justice Department began an investigation into the congressman and then dropped their investigation. But that doesn't matter. These reporters and this senator demand to see what they found, no matter what it is, no matter whether there was any defense put forth, no matter whether Matt Gaetz was given due process during that investigation. It doesn't matter. We demand to see what was found. And it was only investigated because the Justice Department investigated Matt Gaetz and then dropped charges. Are you seeing where I'm going here? Yeah. Just wait. We've got more reaction, and then I'll tell you again. I'll answer the burning question everyone asking on Capitol Hill when they saw Matt Gaetz was nominated for Attorney General. They were all asking, apparently, what the and I'm going to explain to you the actual in a moment. More reaction? Sure, absolutely, we've got more reaction. How about J.D. Vance chiming in after he saw the circus that was unfolding last night? He said the main issue with Matt Gaetz is that he used his office to prosecute his political opponents and authorize federal agents to harass parents who were peacefully protesting at school board meetings. Oh, no, wait. That's actually Merrick Garland, the current Attorney General. J.D. Vance, kind of stealing part of my delivery here, but I don't mind. Senior Trump advisor is quoted saying Trump is going to bring in somebody who is going to burn down the DOJ from the inside. And Matt is going to do that. Conservatives believe the DOJ is in chaos. You starting to figure out exactly what's going on here? The pieces of the puzzle are being put together. I'm sure you can start to see the image. Our friend Sean Davis, he's the co-founder of The Federalist, said it in no uncertain terms, and he didn't mince words. Let's read along together. Every swamp rat crying about Gaetz didn't lift a finger while DOJ was running illegal coup after illegal coup against our elected government from 2016 to 2020. They didn't say a word when DOJ illegally seized the phones of Representative Scott Perry or Representative Andy Ogles. They were quiet as a church mouse when DOJ illegally spied on Trump. They were nowhere to be found when DOJ hatched and ran the entire fake kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer. They did nothing when DOJ allowed violent threats against Supreme Court justices to continue. And don't even get me started on the paralysis regarding the insane DOJ J6 op. So to everyone in Washington crying about Matt Gaetz, you are the reason he is necessary. Understand that it is happening because of your own fecklessness or complicity. You did nothing. While the infection festered and the cancer spread at DOJ, you looked the other way as it nearly destroyed the country. And now you wonder why emergency medicine is necessary? So as you cry at Capitol Grill over expensive wine bought for you by your corrupt K Street donors, just know that all of this is your fault and that it's not going to stop until the problems you deliberately ignored are finally solved. Sean Davis, boys and girls, at The Federalist. Congressman Tom Massey of Kentucky was chased down by a reporter and asked about Matt Gaetz and whether he can be confirmed or not, considering potential opposition over in the Senate chambers. And, well, he summed it up rather succinctly.
He will be confirmed by the Senate. Then he can be recessed. He's the Attorney General. Suck it up.
I don't know if you could hear him or not, so I'll quote him. He said, recess appointment. He'll be appointed via recess appointment. Suck it up. Now, a recess appointment is what happens if Congress is in recess and the president makes an appointment. The person automatically fills the job during that recess until and when they can have the opportunity to actually be approved by the Senate. It happens all the time. It very rarely happens right at the beginning of an administration. So we'll see how it's employed in this case. Jack Posobiec over at Human Events just reminded everybody of the vote count for Merrick Garland when he was appointed as Attorney General during the first month of the Biden administration. He got 70 yeas and 30 nays. That means he got approximately 20 Republicans voting for him. 20 Republicans crossed the aisle and put Merrick Garland in place. And we've seen how Merrick Garland has conducted himself as the Attorney General. Knowing how Merrick Garland has conducted himself, and you're a Republican that voted for him, how can you possibly now withhold your support for Matt Gaetz? It's a good question that the people of those Republican states should be asking their fine senator right now by calling them and telling them how they should vote. Meanwhile, a senator, not one that approved of Merrick Garland, this one would be Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, even though he coached for Auburn. In fact, we prefer Auburn to Alabama, but I don't want to get into that. War Eagle. He spoke on Fox Business about the prospects of the confirmation.
Matt Gaetz get the votes in the Senate?
I don't know. You're finding all the swamp creatures coming out right now. Everybody's got an opinion up here, but at the end of the day, President Trump was elected by an enormous vote, and he deserves a team around him that he wants. It's not us to determine that. We've got 53 votes in the Senate. We can confirm with 51. I've already seen where a couple of them says, I'm not voting for him. Wait a minute. You are not the United States of America. You have one vote in the U.S. Senate. You did not get elected president. Vote with President Trump. This is the last chance we're going to have of saving this country. And if you want to get in the way, fine. But we're going to try to get you out of the Senate, too, if you try to do that.
What parts of Trump's...
Read between the lines there. You vote against Gaetz. That's fine. We will primary your next time we have the opportunity. Tommy Tuberville, with no uncertain terms. One minor correction, though, you can actually confirm them with 50 votes, not 51. J.D. Vance would be the tiebreaker there. Very important to start drawing lines right now. Senate has advice and consent. They don't have veto power I mean, technically they do, but they're not supposed to exercise it. They're not supposed to say, well, we'll provide advice and consent, but ultimately we just don't like this guy because he makes us feel icky, so we're going to say no. I want to remind you, 20 Republicans voted for Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland. Let's remind you who Merrick Garland is. Very recently, Merrick Garland had some very important words to say to the American people about the pristine integrity of the Justice Department, and by extension, he himself, the man who led the Justice Department, and about truth, justice, and the American way, and what's out of bounds these days in terms of any criticism of that fair establishment. Let's listen to what he has to say and take it to heart, shall we?
Mr. Attorney General, Republicans in Congress have flirted with the idea of holding the FBI director in contempt. It's become a talking point on the campaign trail, the alleged corruption in the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies. Do the American people have cause to be concerned about the integrity of the components of this Justice Department, and what do you have to say about how they're acting?
I certainly understand that some have chosen to attack the integrity of the Justice Department and its components and its employees by claiming that we do not treat like cases alike. This constitutes an attack on an institution that is essential to American democracy and essential to the safety of the American people. Nothing could be further from the truth. You've all heard me say many times that we make our cases based on the facts and the law. These are not just words. These are what we live by. They are the foundation of the way we make these decisions. The agents of the FBI, as well as the DEA, the ATF, our deputy U.S. Marshals, every day, often at great personal risk, protect the American people and secure its safety. Our cases are based on their work. I could not be more proud to work with them.
Well, I'm glad you're proud. Just summarize what he said there. An attack on the Justice Department and the people who work here, and the Attorney General by extension, is an attack on American justice itself. Well, if Matt Gaetz becomes Attorney General, do those words continue to hold true? I mean, any criticism of Matt Gaetz, any attack on what the Attorney General or the Justice Department ends up doing under Attorney General Matt Gaetz, does that mean that you can't attack Matt Gaetz? Does that mean that you can't attack the Justice Department? Otherwise, you're attacking justice itself. It's like Fauci. I represent science, damn it. It's amazing how you put a different character in the costume there and on set. You put Matt Gaetz in that suit, although he'd wear it much better, and have him standing at the podium with the seal of the Department of Justice. And he stands there saying, you attack the Justice Department and you're attacking the Constitution itself and the idea of justice. Well, people would laugh you out of the room. But this clown, he gets away with it because, well, he's on our side, they say. Your NBC News, you've already talked to two of your reporters about this, and they've, of course, confirmed your bias and exactly what you wanted to know. Now, where do you turn? Oh, I've got an idea. How about a guy who was drummed out of the first Trump administration, has become a sworn enemy of Donald Trump, and who, by the way, got his job in the Bush administration with a, say it with me, recess appointment. That's right. John Bolton, who was the ambassador to the United Nations under President George W. Bush, was actually never confirmed by the Senate. He got there via recess appointment. So I think it's fair to ask him about the prospects of Matt Gaetz getting a confirmation that Bolton never actually got.
President-elect Trump intends to nominate Matt Gaetz to run the Department of Justice. What was your immediate reaction when you heard that?
Well, it must be the worst nomination for a cabinet position in American history. I think this is something that falls well outside the scope of deference that should be given to a president in nominating members of his senior team. Gaetz is not only totally incompetent for this job, he doesn't have the character. He is a person of moral turpitude. And notwithstanding how difficult it may be politically, this is a nomination the Republican Party should oppose.
Interesting. Now, John Bolton says this is the worst nomination to a cabinet position in American history. This, of course, could be true considering John Bolton was never nominated for a cabinet position. So I guess we'll never really know. That said, to say that Matt Gaetz is not qualified for the job is fascinating, considering we've just had I don't know, Rachel Levine, a gentleman who is unsure about his own actual sex, even though he can look between his legs and see exactly what's dangling there. That person, known as Rachel Levine, has been the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services for the entire Biden administration. Let's not forget the bald cross-dressing dude who was able to access nuclear secrets as one of the deputies in the Secretary of Energy, excuse me, the Department of Energy, until he was kicked out because he was arrested for stealing women's luggage so that he could then wear their dresses on the red carpet in Washington, D.C. Oh, and of course, Pete Buttigieg, a man who was the mayor of the fourth largest town in Indiana, who got the job as Secretary of Transportation because, I kid you not, he likes to ride in trains. Yeah, they were all super qualified. Oh, but the Attorney General is very different. You know, the Attorney General, you have to be super qualified to be the Attorney General. Okay. Well, in 1960, John F. Kennedy appointed a 35-year-old man with a law degree to be the Attorney General. He'd never held elected office. He had never been an Attorney General. In fact, that young lawyer at 35 years of age had actually never really tried a case all by himself in court. His main experience in Washington, D.C. was to be the counsel for several committees during the 50s, including the infamous Eugene McCarthy hearings, trying to drum out actual communists who were working in the federal government, although most people think that that committee went a little too far in their zeal to drum out the communists. Yeah, he was the attorney for Eugene McCarthy during the Red Scare. That guy's qualifications, well, the number one qualification for that 35-year-old lawyer to be Attorney General was his last name. It happened to be the same last name as the president. I've just described Robert F. Kennedy, who, of course, is a hero of all swamp creatures in Washington, D.C. Kind of ironic that his son was instrumental in giving Donald Trump the landslide election that he won last week, putting him in a position to be able to name whoever the hell he wants as Attorney General. And that's exactly what he did. Well, what are the senators saying? We've already heard from John Cornyn, one of the Republican senators. How about a Democrat? How about this guy? What's he say?
I mean, I would describe it as God tier level trolling to just trigger a full-on China syndrome to own the libs in perpetuity.
Okay.
I mean, I would just.
Is that what this is? Was it God level trolling to own the libs in perpetuity? Maybe. Maybe. Some have speculated that this is Donald Trump playing 4D chess again. You know, you have to have some cannon fodder. You got to throw one of them out there that's going to get knocked down. So go ahead and let Gaetz get knocked down so he can do all these other appointments, and they won't, because they don't have the energy in the Senate to go after all of them, like Tulsi and Kristi Noem and whoever else might be coming down the path. Oh, and Pete Hegseth, et cetera, et cetera. That could be true. Or again, speaking about the 4D chess speculation, I've heard this one, that this was a deal with Speaker Johnson that gets Matt Gaetz out of the House so that there's no obstruction to keeping Johnson from becoming the Speaker again. But then when Gaetz is not confirmed, he's out of luck. But here's the real kicker. 4D chess, remind me now. DeSantis, the governor of Florida, will appoint Gaetz to be the new senator from Florida, thus replacing Marco Rubio, who's now going to the State Department. So that means senators like John Fetterman and the Republicans in the Senate have to make a choice. Do we want to confirm him as Attorney General, or do we then want to work with him as our colleague as the new senator from Florida? Oh my God, we don't want him in the Senate. So let's just throw him to the Justice Department. 4D chess, my friends, 4D chess. I don't think it's any of those things. Let me simplify it for you. First of all, I don't think it's any of those things that I just laid out, because even though everyone loves to say that Donald Trump plays 4D chess, the fact of the matter is, one thing we've learned from Donald Trump over the years is that what you see is what you get. The man does not play games, whether it's 4D chess or anything else for that matter. He does what he wants to do, and he does it because he wants it done. He nominated Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General because Donald Trump wants Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. I reminded you earlier that Matt Gaetz is facing this House Ethics Committee investigation over tawdry claims that he was somehow involved with perhaps an underage young lady, and for one of their dalliances, they crossed state lines, which of course would be a federal crime. Except The federal government, in the auspices of the FBI, under the control of the Justice Department, actually did investigate that. And as I mentioned earlier, they dropped that investigation, which would suggest that no crimes were committed, no laws were broken. And yet we know about that investigation, don't we? Why do we know about that investigation? Why do we, the people, know that Matt Gaetz was investigated by the FBI for such a heinous crime, which, again, apparently he did not commit? We know because the FBI leaked the information about their investigation to the media so that the media could report on the investigation that, again, has been dropped. Matt Gaetz, of course, is innocent until proven guilty, and since this investigation was merely leaked to the media and never actually brought to a court of law, he is 1,000% innocent. And yet you won't hear anybody in Washington, D.C. say that. After all, he's facing a House ethics investigation. See, the House Ethics Committee, they don't follow the same rules of investigation that the FBI or the Justice Department do. They can see the smoke that came from the leak and then, I guess, pursue it and see if there's any fire there. And Lord knows there's probably a lot of tawdry stuff they discovered that still probably doesn't fall under the auspices of a crime. I make that assumption because, may I repeat, the FBI investigated this and dropped the investigation. And the only reason they would drop it is because, in fact, there was no crime. Given all of that, given the fact that the FBI, under the Justice Department, under our current Attorney General Merrick Garland, appointed by Joe Biden, the fact that they did that and leaked it to the media is kind of Exhibit A. All right, let's say it's probably Exhibit R by now, given all the other things we've seen from the Justice Department, but it's a perfect example for those of us who believe that real reforms need to be made at the FBI and the Justice Department. And it'll only happen if somebody has the cojones to actually go in and be a honey badger, to absolutely not give a shit, and go in and actually, with a vengeance, fix what's broken, because we, the people, we deserve to have a pristine FBI and Justice Department, just like the one that Merrick Garland duplicitously described in his little press conference over there. One that we can feel confident of, that isn't using the law as a political weapon against people, who won't leak tawdry information about an FBI investigation that then gets dropped, but it's out there and people's reputations are destroyed. That's the stuff of nightmares. Why did Donald Trump appoint Matt Gaetz as Attorney General? Well, this is the third person that Donald Trump has had the honor of appointing to the Justice Department. First, it was Senator Sessions. He appointed Senator Sessions as a payback, a reward for Senator Sessions supporting him early on in the presidential campaign of 2016. Then the Russian collusion hoax broke. Sessions recused himself and took a hands-off approach, stepped away, and the thing spread like a wildfire. Then he appointed Bill Barr, who was better than Sessions, but also very disappointing when it came to a lot of the things that were thrown at Donald Trump to try to destroy his presidency and destroy his character. If you ask Donald Trump about his first two Justice Department appointees, he would say the same thing about both of them. He was disappointed because they were weak. Why did he appoint Matt Gaetz? Because he wants someone strong. It's just that simple. And now you know the actual. Well, we can now exhale, right? Take that deep breath. Our side won. Work can finally be done on the major issues this country is facing. And one of the most significant is our national debt. The fact is, our country is broke. And that debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. So the strategy remains the same now for you personally. Diversify your savings. So many things are out of our control, even out of President Trump's control, frankly. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group, they'll help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA of physical gold. And the best news is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. Text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. And right now, listen to this offer. Right now, between now and Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, you're going to get a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Claim your eligibility for free silver today.